Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Leadership Project. I'm very honored today to be joined by a special guest, Lee Prosenjak. Lee's job title is got to be one of the best ones I've ever seen. He is the owner and director of Cherry Creek Dance, with the job title, the guy that does everything but teach dance. And we're going to go into some of those things during the interview today. He started Cherry Creek Dance with his wife 28 years ago and uses that to inspire people to find themselves through the creativity of art and through dance. He's also an igniter with the Simon Sinek Corporation, and he's the COO and a partner at Hesse Partners, where they run strategy sessions, retreats, and focus in on group development. He's also a master forum trainer with Entrepreneurs Organization and part of the Global Forum Committee. And that's also something that I think that we will touch on during today's interview. Overall, I think the best way to sum up Lee is the tagline that he uses on his LinkedIn profile, which is to create art so that everyone can find their own inspiration, love, and greatness. Lee, it's a great honor to have you on the show today. Please, can you introduce yourself to our audience and tell us a little bit more about your background and what led you to be with us today?
Nick, a pleasure. My goodness, thanks for having me here. I think you kind of did it. You kind of gave the background. I'm gonna carry you around with me all the time and just like let you give that introduction wherever I go to anybody I meet. You know, like they'll be like, "Who are you?" and I'll just turn over to you and you can introduce me. That'll be easier for me. Save me some words there. What do you think?
Outstanding, Lee. I'd be pleased to do it, particularly, and most people won't know this, particularly that you're in the Bahamas right now.
Right.
If you need me to come over there and do that for you, I'll be there tomorrow.
Hey, open invite. You know, that's I love it. I love it. It's always a great time. Yeah. You know, you read off all these great bullet points, all these fantastic things that I do currently and have done for years and things, and that's something that's always been really important to me, especially as an artist, is to never have the same day happen twice. And I love the idea that I can jump from sort of thing to thing. And I was just right before we jumped on this recording of the podcast here. Sorry if I just disillusioned everybody that this isn't live, just FYI. But I just had to go have some interaction for our hotel project. I was sending emails and Slack messages this morning around the dance studio and having some text messages and things too. So and later on this afternoon, I've got to work with a one-on-one coaching client that I have too. So I mean, like there's always something new, there's always something different, and that's really intriguing to me. That and in the middle of this, because I'm in the Bahamas, I just go walk on the beach, and that's where I feed my soul quite a bit too. So I know it's horrible. It's horrible.
Terrible. Someone's got to do it, and thank you for sacrificing yourself and walking on the beach for us all. That's that's very inspirational, actually. So Lee, you've got such a diverse career and so many wonderful things there. And there are so many directions that this conversation could take. And I'm planning to follow it wherever it takes us. The thread that I'd like to probably share with the audience, what really intrigues me about Lee in all of that he does, it's really about how people learn. So we're going to focus a lot on how people learn and how that might change throughout their development, whether it changes as they get older or whether it changes generationally. So that'll be a little bit of a thread through there as we talk about Lee's background. So tell me more about Cherry Creek Dance. So 28 years now. What inspired you to create the studio in the first place?
Well, it was actually my wife, Stephanie, that created the dance studio. And so it was her vision, it was her idea. And it's just something that she was a dance instructor and worked all over Denver and had a pretty good following of people, and then decided that it was time for her to do her own thing and be an entrepreneur. And she's got a great mindset in that she can she gets, she's the total artist that sees the vision for all of the productions and all the choreography and things along those lines. And of course, there's a great team that we've assembled over all these years too, of just amazing artists themselves. And then she's got that sort of that business mindset as well too. So she's really understanding that and saying like, oh my gosh, I think this class works better over here, and let's try this and let's make sure. And if not, let's change the staffing hours so that we're not paying for something that is a loss leader or something along those lines. So she's really good about having that sort of both halves of the brain working. And so she started that 28 years ago. I met her, I think it's been 22 years now since I met her the first time. And I could see that vision and I'm like, great, I'm in. Like, let's just go, and so that's really how I got involved. So it was a few years after, and there were things there that said, like we sold tap shoes, and I went to the cupboard and there was like one size of each tap shoe in the cupboard, and I would sell one that day, and then I would call our supplier and leave a message on an answering machine, which is like all for all the the people that don't know what that is, right? Like, sort of like analog voicemail. Which you still might not even know what that means either. But that's, I would call and leave a message on an answering machine every night and say, hey, I sold a size 8 tap shoe today. Could you please send me another one? And, a week later, I would get another size 8 in the mail. And after doing that for, a few months, I started to say, like, maybe you could send me 2 size 8 tap shoes. And then that way, we could build our inventory, and we could, then I had it in stock for the next person that maybe wanted to come in that middle of the week. So it was a lot of just sort of on the job growth, things that I didn't know, things that I had never experienced before, and just that seems to make sense. So let's do more of that.
Yeah, very good. So I guess that leads to this amazing job title. And Elon Musk is really famous for recently just deciding to change his job title and the job title of his CFO. I think the CFO is now called Master of Coin or something like that, right? So not everyone gets to choose their job title, but you did, and your job title is the guy that does everything but teach dance. So tell us more about that.
Yeah, it seemed appropriate, because I've always felt like I'm the person that's running around behind the scenes that you don't necessarily see, and that always just kind of like creates more art there, in what else can we do and how else can we do that? And as a ultra small business at that time, it was a lot of like, I have to wear all of these hats because I really want Stephanie to be able to create art and focus on that. So what do I need to do to take off everything else from her plate so that she can focus on that? And so that became everything else. And it's a very often asked question, including in my sessions even today. They're like, oh, you own a dance studio, teach us some dance moves. And I'm like, well, I got to leave that to the experts. There's some things I have to leave off my plate, and that's one of them. So I can't dance at all. I look horrible when I even try. And so my wife years ago said, maybe don't try that anymore. Maybe that's not your thing, So that's, we'll leave that to the pros. So we leave that to all the experts there, and people that want to be experts. That's why you come to us.
I'm taking 2 very powerful things away from that, Lee. I'm going to start with the last one, which is your wife being so open and clear with you. Lee, perhaps dance is not your thing. That's a very authentic and open and what do they call it? Radical candor. That's radical candor in action right there. I love that.
Scott, yes.
And the other one was surrounding yourself with people, and in this case, it's a marriage as well, but surrounding yourself with people that have got complementary skill sets.
So much.
As a leader, have a think about this, or audience at home. Look at all of the things that you do on a day-to-day basis. Give yourself an honest scorecard. Is that in my wheelhouse? Am I the best person to be able to do this? And have a think about whether outsourcing that to someone else, whether it be your partner, someone else in the business, maybe even a subcontractor, get someone else to do those things that are not in your wheelhouse so that you can focus your energy at what you do best. And in this case, what Stephanie does best is teach dance, be the visionary, be the artistic one. Lee's focus is on the business and how to make it run more smoothly. Is that a good reflection of what I heard there, Lee?
It totally is. Yeah, we look at that as, a lot of times together, Stephanie and I come up with the bowling pins, and then it's my job to knock those down. Yeah. Right? Like that's how we kind of operate and have for very many years. And it's, for the most part, it's gone really well. And I've been a big student of lots of those learnings from different books and theories and things like that. Michael Gerber, the E-Myth, and Tim Ferriss, 4-Hour Work Week, and things along those lines. And I love that idea of being able to work on the business rather than in the business. And that's something that we tried for many years. And it was hard because, again, being an ultra small business at that time and growing and going through those growth pains, there was nobody else to delegate anything else to. There was nobody else to, get on board with this. We couldn't afford anything else either. So I had to wear all those hats. And then as we kept growing, I was slowly starting to get some things off my plate and onto others. And that was helpful. And it wasn't without its missteps either. I think all the time we look at these things and go, oh my gosh, no, it was so perfect. And look at this. It was a perfect rise and ascension into greatness. No, we had a bookkeeper that stole $47,000 from us. And I mean, that was over a 6-month period. And I don't know, I'm trying to do the right thing and outsource that to somebody else that's much better at this and clearly much better at finances than I am, because they were able to take a bunch of money out that I didn't know was missing all of a sudden. And at the same time, I had another employee that ran up a corporate credit card to about $13,000 of personal expenses. And so now I got that debt on my books too. And the bookkeeper who was stealing money out the back door is like, I can't believe that person would do that. And what a horrible thing. And, all that sort of, and I'm like, yeah, how horrible. I thought both of these people were on my team. And I totally missed that they were not the right people. And quite honestly, not good people either. So that's I miss that. And that sucked to think about and go, oh my gosh, how did I miss such, these huge glaring examples sort of thing. But what great lessons they've provided for me and for lots of other people across the world all these years later too.
I take 2 things away from that as well, Lee. So the first one, once again, going backwards, that you learnt from it. So every experience that you make, as long as you're learning from it and moving forward, I think that's the best thing that you can take from that. So, and thank you for sharing it with us.
Totally.
The second one that I heard, because we did just say about, outsource the things that are not in your warehouse and let it go. It doesn't mean that you're not accountable.
Correct.
Right. So surround yourself with people you trust, let them do their job, empower them to do their job.
Yes.
That doesn't mean set and forget. You're still accountable. Yeah. Okay. Really.
Yeah. And we got to watch that stuff. I'm still not good at finances. I have a much better team around me now to do that. And it still creates a lot of stress for me, because after that experience happened, Stephanie looked at me and was like, you're signing every check from here on out. No one else is ever allowed to do that. And I'm like, that's horrible for me. That's a horrible job for me to have. I'm not good at it. I don't like it. It causes a lot of anxiety. It causes me to procrastinate, which is my cue for, I realize that about myself, that every time I procrastinate, it's because I get overwhelmed. And so I don't know where to start. So I just won't start. And so it took a long time to rebuild that trust with somebody new, to even say like, hey, I think I need more help on this again. And then to have that trust with Stephanie to say like, by the way, let's look for somebody else to do that. I mean, that was a whole nother conversation of its own, to say, how are we ever going to find somebody? And what are the stopgaps there? Tough.
Wonderful self-awareness there, Lee, but also like the lesson that you're talking there about trust and accountability. Yeah, really good. Well, let's go a little bit deeper into Cherry Creek Dance, and this will start on this journey about learning. So in Cherry Creek Dance, you've got dancers of all ages, from almost babies through to adults, right? So from from people
16 months all the way up through. We used to train the it's in Colorado, and we trained the Miss Senior Colorado, someone who won that title in a pageant. So it would be impolite to ask that person their age, of course. And so but it's up there. It's up there.
Let's just say 16 months through to older.
Yes, much older. Yeah.
Very, very politely.
At least 29. At least 29. Yes.
At least 29. Okay. All right. So that's a very polite way of saying it. What do you and Stephanie see in that evolution? Like, so as someone goes through, let's start with a child, and let's talk about through the eyes of a child, how they see the world and how they learn.
Yeah, what a great question, and a great concept too. What we've always strived to do, and Stephanie can talk about this far deeper than I can, is that what we've always strived to do is to create a fun, a positive environment where people enjoy this. So, especially with like things like ballet has had a long history of people mistreating each other and yelling at someone that you're doing that wrong and something along those lines, and which has created its own share of issues in the world. And anyone that says that people that study ballet are not they're not without their faults, and they've always had a lot of things that go along with that, like improper diet and not taking very good care of their body, and body awareness issues and things along those lines, that self-image issues. And I think that's from years and years of a bunch of sort of the negative, the stick approach of let's smack you for doing something wrong. And in the environment that we like to create, we want to just create art. And so we'd like to help you do something that's right instead of looking for something that's wrong. So let's complement the things that you're doing really well. And it's not just a toxic positivity of where you're where you're only saying like, this is great and you're perfect and you're gold. No, it's not that. But let's focus on those things that are strengths for each and every one of those dancers. And we don't just ignore the weaknesses and say, oh, well, you'll pick up tap dancing eventually. Like it's not something along those lines, but let's really harness that. So it's a creative, it's a fun environment all the time. It's very positive. And again, not without its own drama, of course. Anytime you get a group of kids together and their parents together too, and they're on a repeated basis, and so they're going to have a lot of interaction together, there's a lot that goes on there. So we try and demonstrate what that looks like to have that positive attitude with each one of our instructors and each one of the team members that you'll interact with. We try and do that in our messaging. And then when we're in the classroom, that's what we're talking about. That's what we're reinforcing all the time, is that positive. This is a fun, and this should be an enjoyable experience. And that drive that comes for each of those dancers, we have I can't tell you how many people that just, take 1 hour of class a week with us for years and years and years and years. And, it's been around for 28 years. We have people that have been bringing back not only their kids, but in this case, grandkids too, that are coming back and learning dance from our team. Like that's awesome, because it means that we're doing something right. And we have a whole ton of people that have gone on to professional careers and are on Broadway and kind of every major show. Typically we have one or two of our alumni dancers that are in all those shows, and lots of the big rock concert tours that you see with dancers and or just still performers in their own right. And I look at that as we did our job well with that, with both of those groups too, because as long as we fostered a lifelong love of art for each person that we come into contact with, that's a win. Now, what you want to do with that is up to you, and that drive comes from within. And some kids, you can see that very early on, that they're like, yes, I'm driven to be better at this, and I have a lot of passion for that. But it doesn't mean that they're always going to have that passion, that they're always going to see that in that same light. It might be the right choice for them today, but a different choice to make tomorrow. So I want this to be fun. I want people to have that great experience, so that no matter what, I always say that the dance never leaves you either. So like at some point, like, cool, that's something that I did when I was a kid. Now it's like, I'm coming back as an adult and saying like, where can I I don't want to just go to the gym and hit the treadmill or ride the stationary bike or something along those lines. I want to do something that's more fun and it can engage that creative side of me as well as the aerobic side.
Outstandingly. There's two themes I want to pick up on there, and we'll go one at a time. But the two are about that fun aspect, and the second one is about positive psychology. I'll start on the positive psychology one. And Martin Seligman, he's the father of positive psychology, and he can describe this in ways that I can't possibly match him. So if you want to study it further, he would be the go-to person for anyone in the audience that wants to go deeper into this. But there's absolutely something in this. And I also want to correct a misunderstanding about positive psychology, which is also something that you touched on there, Lee. So the concept about positive psychology and reinforcing with positive language, with positive affirmations of what's working, and really encouraging someone. I'll find this video and I'll put it in the show notes. There's a really great, pretty extreme study that was conducted on golfers and getting into the mind of these people that were going through golfing lessons. And the instructors purposely in a controlled study were giving encouragement to one group of golfers, and their improvement over time was, in fact, in some cases dramatic, but it was a steady improvement. And then on the other side was the overly critical, and it was a little bit exaggerated, but the over critical, oh my God, that's the worst golf swing I've ever seen, or that's never going to work, and all these things. And sure enough, the golfers start shanking the ball and all over the place. There's absolutely something in positive psychology when used correctly. But one of the things that I picked up with you, Lee, there is that it is about encouragement. It is about positivity, but it's not about telling someone, oh, that's wonderful, when it's not.
Yeah.
So if they aren't exactly getting the steps right, or whatever the case may be, you do need to correct them, but correct them in a positive way. Is that what I'm hearing, Lee?
100%. And I do this even with my work with CEOs and everything too. I'm like, wow, I think I hear where you're trying to go with that. What makes you want to say that? What makes you want to do that thing? What makes you want to, and let's go into that rather than just say like, no, you're wrong. And I have a strong belief that one oh no takes away, at least 10 way to goes. Yeah. So you get that one negative thing and you're like, well, yeah, that person never liked me in the last 10 years. I'm like, no. Right. So I want to be very careful with that, because I don't want to be that. I don't want to take from that bank account.
Yeah, good. And this is at the root of psychology, really, in this, that if you go in that critical mindset, someone is going to tap into their reptilian brain. They're going to get into fight or flight mode. They're going to get defensive. Yeah. Whereas if you can keep them in their frontal cortex, or even if you build emotion into it and use the limbic brain, they're going to be in an exploratory. They're not going to shut down on you. They're ready to expand their mind. They're ready to explore what they're talking with you. And you're still correcting them, and you're still giving them the guidance that they need. Or in some cases, you're taking them on a journey of discovery, and they're finding it themselves even better through this kind of positive approach. One of the things that really makes me think of, very famous quote, I'd love to share this one with you, Lee, and get your thoughts on it. Henry Ford: whether you think you can or can't, you're probably right.
Yeah.
What's your reflections on that?
Totally, because that mindset is so important. So whatever that looks like for you, that's going to be the direction that we go. Whether that's tied to that vision, whether it's not, whether it's, whether that's going to be something that's very positive, yes, I can do this, or whether I say something that's self-sabotaging, like, no, I can't do this, or there's no way I can do this. Yeah, you're right, because that's the direction that you've just set that intention to. Yeah. So I want to set my intention to something that's positive, that's good, that's inspiring to me each and every day. And for me personally, I use a lot of music to do that. so that I can help myself go towards that positive space, no matter what that is. So that's a great song first thing in the morning. That's something in the middle of the day to kind of help me, muster through, or keep it going, or something along those lines. If I'm in a repetitive task, which I don't like at all, I'm like, I gotta figure this out, and that really helps me kind of just overcome and like, let's go. I can do this. I can do this.
Wonderful sharing, Lee. I think that's a good segue to get us back to the second topic, which is fun.
Yeah.
Tell me more about how you make learning fun in the dance studio.
It's that I've always said that the dance studio has been like my sandbox to practice for the rest of the world. And so when I started off with Stephanie and met her 22 years ago and jumped right in, I was like, wow, this is kind of cool. And then as we grew the business and we became a member of the Entrepreneurs Organization, or EO, which was 16 years ago now, I think. Oh my gosh, that seems like forever ago. I use the same sort of techniques when I do like a bunch of the collaborative mastermind groups, if you will. We call that a forum. When I work with forums and talk to CEOs from companies all over the world, sort of thing, I use the same sort of techniques, which I don't like to tell that to the CEOs, that I'm using the same ideas on you that I use on the 2-year-olds at the dance studio. But really, a lot of that is true. It's just a slightly different approach, and definitely a different vocabulary compared to the 2-year-olds. But that's it's the for me, it's a very much a learning journey of how to actually approach this and what to do. I've got very clear intentions at one end of, here's what we'd like to accomplish. In the dance studio, that's a recital dance, or something that we're going to perform, or some sort of art that we're going to create, and that can be a small group of people, larger group of people. It really kind of depends. And in my work with CEOs, it's really it's this larger group, or what do we see? What's the vision that you'd like to see, and what would you like to achieve? And no matter what, it's the positive to say like, okay, how can we get there? What does that look like? And in that journey, I say, great, well, how are we going to get there? So when I work with like the CEOs and do those roundtable groups, what I essentially do is I say something of the content. So I'll say like, okay, here's the concept that we're going to wrestle with today. And then I explain it to them. Could be my own idea, could be somebody else's idea, right? But I'll explain that content to them and say, here it is. And then what I do is I give us a chance to interact with it. So we ask questions. Same thing in the choreography, right? Like, they're asking questions. Was it this foot or that foot? Do I spin inside, outside? Those type of things, right? So we have a chance to ask questions and really interact with it. And then it goes to an experiential place where we're learning, okay, so now let's take what we've learned and do it. So let's do some sort of fashion of that. For the CEOs, that looks like an exercise that's built around something like that. Or let's go have a conversation, or go break down to a one-on-one, or a small group of 3, or, let's go out to a larger group, if that, whatever the case might be. And a lot of times at the dance studio, we're repeating that move across the floor, or we take just a little section of it and repeat that a couple of times. So make sure that you kind of get it and really get a chance to interact with it. And Stephanie always says, I want you to get this into your bones, right? So like, I want you to just really feel like you've got it. And so when we do that experiential part, that's the difference. It's very easy to sit on the sidelines and say, oh, I could do that. It's very different if you're actually doing it, trying it, getting it, and going, oh my gosh, this looks horrible, or my foot should be over here. How do you shift your weight like that? How do you think about that marketing idea differently? Mm-hmm. And so you can see that those different interaction points when they're in the experience itself. And once we do that, then we get back together and debrief that and say, all right, how'd that go? And that's something that just is so like powerful, is in that debrief to say, oh, like totally see how that was so different, or why the team, why we didn't complete that task, or why it felt so weird to do that move, or I missed that formation or something. I can see now what was going on there. And so you're having your own insights, your own learning, and it's going to be different than what I could ever tell you it's going to be. So I just have to be open to that, to say like, I don't know where my learning is going to come from. And some days it's going to be here and some days it's going to be there, but I'm just open to that concept. But that's kind of my sort of 4-step process on how I teach content, what that looks like, what that, how we interact with it all the time.
All right, I want to explore a little bit deeper on two things there. I'll summarize something on the fun part, and then I want to come to the questioning and the journey of discovery that you just were touching on. So on the fun part, I'm like you, very similar to the sports analogy that you brought up before. I actually do enjoy running, interestingly enough, and not everyone does, but I do enjoy running. But even I, as a runner, don't like the treadmill, right? I call it the dreadmill, like many people. Really do not like treadmills, right? So put me on a treadmill for 30 minutes and I'm like, is it over yet? Put me on a tennis court for 2 hours. And at the end of the 2 hours, I go, really? Are we done? Can't we keep going? Right? So because I'm having fun, and have a look at my step count at the end of a tennis match, I can tell you it's more than probably when I was running. Right? So I go crazy running around the court and all those kind of things because I'm having fun the whole time.
Yeah.
My question to you, challenging one, how do we bring that into the workplace? So that if you're on a 2-hour Zoom meeting, let's say, that people don't go, oh, thank God that's over, versus, oh, are we done? Really? Can't we keep going? Right. Any thoughts?
Yeah, it's actually at the very beginning of the pandemic here, I jumped on with a whole bunch of the teams that we work with. And we talked about, what does it mean to be on Zoom? And what does that look like? And how is that different than conducting this meeting on a normal basis, traditional basis, I should say, where that was everyone stand around the water cooler and, talk at each other for 10, 15 minutes. And I believe it's that interaction that we can utilize in Zoom too. One of my good friends, Jen Waldman, she said she became obsessed with this one question at the very beginning of the pandemic, which was, what can we build that's so great virtually that it would suck if it were in person? And I've sort of, used my own language there, right? And bastardized her quote. So, but that's what I became obsessed with too. And I'm like, no, I used to do this thing in person and it worked really well here. But is that the right choice to make for virtual? Is that the thing? So we've been using all sorts of virtual techniques throughout all of the sessions that I do, including the work with CEOs, the public classes that we have, both at the dance studio with Team Simon, like all those things. Like, it's not just like let's talk at you. Nobody wants that. And it doesn't interact with the content. If that learning is going to come from the experiential part or the debrief of the experiential part, that sort of stuff, I got to get to that, and I got to get to that faster. So when I'm on Zoom, I'm like, let's type into the chat here. And we can do that all day long, type into the chat, type your notes in chat. And one of the phrases that I often say on Zoom calls is, listen, if it was an aha moment for you, chances are good that it was an aha moment for somebody else. So please do add all those nuggets that you get into the chat, so that even if you're writing them down in your notes or your handwriting or something, because you need to see it that way to remember that, write it into the chat, because somebody else is thinking about that totally differently. So let's hear what they're thinking about too. What struck them, because I can get it in short bursts there instead of just, so using the chat, and just like a chat is cool. I do a lot of things, like I call it a chat swarm, where everyone waits and we type everything in, but don't push enter yet until the very end. And on the count of 3, everyone hits enter at the same time. Now we got this whole bunch of stuff that I don't have time to read all those things, especially not when I'm delivering a course. So I just trust that there's like greatness that comes out in there. And the best part is there's a lot of times where people say, I'll have what they're having, what sounds good today? Well, I'll take the veggie burger. Oh, that sounds great. I'll have what they're having. Well, there's not a chance to do that. So if we're brainstorming differently, we can use a chat swarm to say, instead of just saying like, what's that, who had the first idea, usually the leader, by the way, if they, let's do a brainstorm. How are we going to save the company? And the leader says, I've got an idea. And everyone says, let's do that. That's clearly the best idea. So there's this leadership bias that goes along with that. And we never hear any of the other ideas. Right. Well, if we use a chat swarm, there's no chance to say like, oh, cool, let's go with that one. Everyone's contributing all at once. to say like, let's see what's out there. And then we can look at that and go, ooh, I think we could build on this. Ooh, I think we can build on that. That one we might have to shelve for a couple of years. We don't have the right time, right? So we can get interactive. I use slides. I use lots of different things, different media. I've got videos that I play in my presentations. I do, right? Like those are all different interaction points. So it's not just me talking at somebody for an entire hour. That wouldn't work for a dance class at all, right? If I just told you, here are the steps and here's how you do it, that wouldn't work. It's the same thing with our CEOs too, that won't work at them either.
3 really super powerful.
Mick, I'm not joking. You're coming with me everywhere. This is perfect. I'm writing my own stuff down now all of a sudden. This is good.
Okay, this is brilliant, Lisa. 3 exceptional lessons come from that. The first one, I just love that you stopped and considered, what are the emerging properties from a virtual environment that you couldn't have done in a physical environment? I just love that. And the one that you picked on is a really important one, is in a physical environment, politeness tells us, well, it's a bit more, even more than politeness, but politeness tells us that only one person talks at a time. In a virtual environment, you can have continuous engagement that is not necessarily one person at a time. And sometimes it can get out of hand, like you said, the flood of, oh, wow, where did all those comments come from? But the fact that everyone has that opportunity to do that is really interesting, really interesting.
I'm going to throw one quick point in here too, because I just can't stand it, is that like our tradition, our culture already on virtual has been everybody go on mute unless it's your turn to talk. And we wouldn't do that if we were in the room together. I wouldn't wait for you. Like I would wait for you to finish before I say, hey, I've got a question or I want to, right? But even that act of like pushing the unmute button can be a limiting thing sometimes. Like, oh, I'm not going to ask that question. I'd have to unmute myself, wait for a pause in the conversation. So with my group of CEO roundtables, I'm like, everybody off mute the entire time. You've got to be off mute the entire time. This is a dialogue. Yeah. This is not a lecture.
That's an interesting one there. And a lot of the please go on mute comes from background noise and all that kind of stuff. But if you can control that background noise, and remove the problem, not the essence of it, right? And then everyone get off mute and have a conversation. That's really interesting. Yeah.
$50 on Amazon, get yourself a good mic. You've got a great mic, you've got a great camera, right? Like you can invest in this a little bit. I went overboard, of course, but like other people, you can invest in this, $100, $200 sort of thing, and you've got a great setup. And it can be very similar to being in person, or sometimes better.